So are you looking to improve your leash work? I want to share with you 4 different tips that I use on an almost daily basis to communicate to dogs using a leash. So if you're ready, here we go. Okay, so tip number 1 has to do with the use of this tool. This right here is a British slip lead. The British slip lead is a really fantastic leash. I love using them. I use it on practically every dog that I train. Now, it doesn't make it the right leash, but it's a great beginner leash to begin to use with dogs. There's been one problem that I've noticed over the years that I've been training with British slip leads, is that you've got a 50% chance of putting it on wrong. Okay, so here's what I want to show you how the slip leash is actually supposed to work. So if you notice here, I'm going to take this, and then when I pull, you're going to see how it feeds into that, right? So if I just undo that and I don't move my hand, and I come and I double back over like this, when I double back over, what's going to happen is if I pull, see how it's completely binding, but now when I come in back this way and I pull, you're going to see how it begins to tighten, okay? So there is a right way and a wrong way to put these on. Okay, so let me walk you through this first part. This is what I've seen on the internet more often than not, okay? You want to put it on by making the letter P. See that P right there? You want to make a P. Now the way that I remember to do this is a little bit different. What I do is I take my left hand and I put it on the leather left. Then the other thing that I do is that I put the rope in my right hand. So I've got leather left, rope right, and then I've got this ring right here on the top of my hand because I want to make sure it's oriented properly. If you accidentally do this, okay, it's not going to work out. And you see, you don't really have a P anymore. Here's your P. So leather left, rope right, okay, you're in the shape of a P, and then that's going to go over the top of your dog's head. Okay, so you're also going to need to know how to put on the British slip lead properly, okay? You're going to want to put it at the very top of your dog's neck, not at the bottom of the dog's neck. Once you get it onto the top of your dog's neck, then you're going to take the piece of leather that's on the line and begin to tighten it down. Now you don't want to over tighten it, choking your dog. You want to leave a little bit of wiggle room, okay? But it should be sitting near the top comfortably so that way you can use it to send information to your dog. Now look, if you can't get that right, then there might actually be an alternative for you. And the alternative leads me to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is to use a martingale collar. A martingale collar works a lot like a slip leash, okay, in that it's actually going to tighten as you put your leash pressure, but it's not going to tighten all the way down to 0. The great news about the martingale collar, even though I don't think that it is as effective as the slip leash, but you have virtually a 100% chance of putting it on right. Okay. So how could you actually mess this up? Well, you might put it on, you might actually oversize it, so that's not necessarily good to do. And then, if you're trying to use this as a training collar, most of the time you don't want to connect to this ring right here. You actually want to connect to the ring that causes it to collapse a little bit, okay? So you can see there as I pull, it's collapsing. So you might use a slip leash, you might use a martingale. So if you can't ever put the slip leash on right, then a martingale might actually be a great tool for you. So regardless if you're going to use a martingale or a slip leash, you're still going to have a line in your hand, and that's going to lead me to tip number 3. So for tip number 3, what I'm going to want you to do is I'm going to want you to put in what I call the steering knot. Now the steering knot is a knot that's going to be halfway down the line where your arm is fully extended. Your arm's going to be completely extended, and then what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to put very slight pressure just by flicking your wrist to communicate to your dog. What I don't want you doing is I don't want you curling your arm and putting a ton of pressure down on your dog, regardless if you're using a slip leash or a martingale. So the steering knot makes it a lot easier for you to be able to move your dog from point A to point B without putting on too much pressure. One of the problems with slip leashes and with martingales is that they can choke, and nobody wants to choke their dogs, okay? So if you learn how to use your steering knot in a way that's just nice and gentle by just flicking your wrist, you're gonna see that you're gonna get a lot better communication, and your dog is actually gonna understand you much, much better than if you're being very heavy-handed and choking your dog. Okay, so now on to tip number 4. There's so many different ways that you can hold your leash, okay? And I use 2 main methods to hold a leash, okay? I have what's called the 2-handed method, and I also have the 1-handed method. In the 2-handed method, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna take my right hand and I'm gonna put 3 fingers of my right hand through the leash like this, okay? So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to put that steering knot that we talked about earlier. I'm gonna take the steering knot and I'm gonna place it right there in my hand. So it's gonna look something like this. So 3 fingers of my right hand there, and then my left hand is going to have the steering knot, and it's gonna make it much, much easier to be able to move the dog. The main key here when you're doing the 2-handed technique is that you do wanna keep your right arm down, because it does tend to go super high, and if you're doing that with your dog, you're putting unnecessary pressure. So try to keep your left hand or your right hand that has this right here down by your side, so that way you're not putting unnecessary pressure on your dog. Now, the other technique that I use, and this one's kind of odd for folks, I use a 1-handed technique. In my 1-handed technique, I'm gonna take the leash and I'm gonna put it over my wrist, and then this is the part that's funky for folks. I'm gonna put the leash over like that. The reason that I do this is sometimes I'm walking dogs that are really very, very big and very powerful. So if I do this and then I take my hand and close it there, if they pull all of a sudden, I'm gonna get this reflex that I'm gonna close my hand very, very quickly, so that way they don't get away. What I don't wanna do is I don't like holding the leash here. Now, one thing you guys may not know about me, several years ago, I had a dog bite the living heck out of me, and you might be able to see the scar right there. So I can't form a good fist with this hand. So because of that, that's why this grip right here has really saved me more often than not, instead of using the grip where I personally can't form that fist anymore. So this to that makes it way easier to be able to handle really big, powerful dogs that sometimes suddenly lunge. Okay, so I've shared my main 4 tips, but I've got one more bonus tip for you guys. Look, before I get to that tip, it would mean a lot to me if you would like this video. Drop a comment down below letting me know what you're learning, or if you have any requests for future content that you'd like me to make. And then of course, you could click that subscribe button and then click the notification bell, so that way next time that I put a video out like this, you'll be among the first to know. Okay, so my last tip is this, okay? One of the things that we want to do is nobody wants to have their dog on a leash forever. That's me included, okay? Because I have to train dogs on a daily basis, I constantly have leashes in my hands, but I really love it when I'm able to train with one of my own dogs and I don't have to have a leash anymore. So the bonus tip is a little bit of training for you guys. So what you want to do is, you're getting better with your leash work, is you want to time your leash pressure, and you want to time it together with your body language cue and a voice command. So what I teach here is to put your leash pressure together with leading with your left leg and then giving your voice command all at the same time. Now, this is not a beginner tip. You wouldn't do this the first time that you actually introduce your dog to something. It comes once your dog is already getting a grasp of what you want them to do. So some leash pressure, leading with your left leg, and saying the voice command all together at the same time. And then when your dog gets it right immediately after that, rewarding them in a way that they really like is going to help you get away from your leash and get more to voice commands and body language cues. All right, guys, well, that's it for today's video. Hey, thank you so very much for watching. I hope those tips were helpful. Have a great day, happy training, and I'll be back soon.